this is Gavin Palmer with HeroLFG.com, Hero Looking for Group, and I really appreciate your attention. So, I watched the Tim Pool and Alex Jones video. I had to go to BitChute, and they talked about these cases, these legal cases, and the fact that Joe Biden is not yet presidential-elect Joe Biden. He is only presidential-elect according to the media. And I am a distrustful person in general and do not trust authorities. So I went and just tried to do some research. And if you go to Google and search for evidence of fraud in the 2020 presidential election, you see at the top that you see something like no evidence. So there's a reject of Trump's fraud claims. You've got no evidence. This one says no evidence of mass voter fraud. So that one's a little bit tricky because maybe there is fraud, but it's not massive. And here's another one. Fraud is real, just not on the scale claimed by Trump. This one says no evidence. So there's even contradictions in these results. But what I want you to see is if you go to Ecosia and search for the same thing, there's less opinions in the results. Let's see. This is the one I clicked on. I tried to do a recording before this and it didn't work out well. Technical difficulties. And then I did the same search for DuckDuckGo, and the results look different. And so my point here is that you have to be careful what technology you use to do research, because the companies that the companies behind each of these websites and the companies behind your browser and your search engine, they can all have agendas. And each author that writes these things up, they can have agendas and they have bias. So don't trust everything that you hear and everything that people say. And even don't trust everything you read. Be willing to go try out different search engines and look at different websites. And what it looks like, from my perspective, is that Trump, I would have to look at these presidential, let's do that. Let's look at presidential election results 2020. So what would it take for Trump, through legal battles, to win the election? And from what I can tell, it would take a lot. So you've got something here. You have to get 760. And so Trump, he was missing 38. And so Pennsylvania is 20. So he still would need 18 after that. Here's Arizona. There's 11. So he would need 7 after that. And there you go. So he would need, it looks like, at least 3 states, some combination of 3 states. And, that could be very difficult. And I also wanted to mention, what is fraud? So I read one article about voting machines switching the vote from Biden to Trump. And that kind of fraud I think is very interesting, because I'm interested in election software and processes by which you can have trustworthy elections. I've actually been trying to volunteer to do that work. Started trying to do that over 6 months ago with the Open Source Election Foundation, and it did not work out. But that was a tangent. That kind of fraud is interesting, because the question would be, is there someone who actually tried to help Biden if that happened, or was it a bug in the system? Then I heard a case where someone, this isn't specifically what happened, but there's what happens if someone does a mail-in ballot, and then they die the next day. That's an interesting case where I don't think that's like intentionally deceptive, but it is interesting. The question is like, should that person's vote be counted if they cast their vote before election day and they died a day later, but before election day? So I don't think that isn't the same level of fraud as someone switching votes. For example, people are reading the votes that come in through the mail, and if it's not legible, they have to make some type of educated guess about what the who the voter voted for. And so that's where it was requested that a Democrat and a Republican representative would be there to oversee that process. And so there's legal claims that this was not happening. There's another legal claim where in Pennsylvania, I think, where the question is whether or not the votes that were received after election day count. And so, that could shape some of these results maybe. And ultimately, it seems like every election should be determined in a very objective way, and we try our best to eliminate the possibility for mistakes to happen. And so you don't even have to think, you don't have to believe that there were people trying to steal the election. What you should want is an election system where people can verify that and trust the results. And we've never had that, or at least in my mind, that has never existed. So I do like the idea that we are going to try and identify problems in the election system and hopefully identify solutions. And I would love to talk about possible solutions to the problems in our election system. All right. I hope you enjoyed this. The main point of this video is just that be careful when you do your research. Don't believe the things you read, where people who have agendas can frame their information in such a way where that it leads and persuades people to think a certain thing. So that's it. Thank you for your time. Gavin Palmer, hero looking for Groot.